Rube, just before we started, you sent me a message that said Nick Sirianni is now the dean of Philly pro coaches, at least of the top of the big four. That's pretty crazy.
It is. It just kind of goes to show you. I mean, hockey, they're always firing coaches. I guess Tortorella and Rob Thompson were both hired around the same time in June of 22. Thompson became permanent. He was interim at first. But, yeah, so Nick Sirianni and Doc Rivers obviously got fired today. With the second best record in Sixers history, I was just looking at this. Billy Cunningham had a .698 winning percentage, Hall of Famer. Well, Hall of Famer is a player and a coach. Doc had a winning percentage of .653, second highest in Sixers history, gone after 3 years. Anybody who watched that Game 7, I don't want to get too deep into Sixers. It's the Eagles pod, but I don't think it was all his fault, but I think they kind of had to make a change.
You got to do something.
Had to do something.
Score in the third quarter. That's a tough look.
Yeah, and really – it goes back to the last 6 minutes of Game 6 for me, because they had that series at home, right where they wanted it. They were up. They missed their last 7 shots, and they never got hot again. That was painful to watch.
But Sirianni now been here longer than anyone. It's the nature of coaching at the pro level. It's pretty wild.
Who's going to be the next one to get fired?
Tortorella.
Yeah, if they get off to like a 2-5 start, he's gone. I mean, in the NHL, coaches, like the average coach lasts like 40 games.
Yeah. And like right now, everyone's kind of just dealing with his personality, but it's going to get to people after a while, I would think.
I would think so. Yeah. But it just goes to show you how quickly things change in the pro sports landscape.
It's the old Bum Phillips quote. Remember that one?
Which one was that?
2 types of coaches, them that's fired and them that's going to be fired. I like that a lot.
Doc could use Buddy Ryan's line from when he got fired after 3 straight 10-win seasons. I've been fired for losing before. I've never been fired for winning.
I like that too. All right, this is the Eagle Eye Podcast. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. We do have a bunch of Eagles stuff to talk about. Our last pod was right after the schedule release, so the Eagles had some odd timing last week. They brought out all their coordinators hours before the schedule got released, so we haven't had a chance to really talk about what any of those guys said. And it was our first time meeting Sean Desai. It was our first time talking to Brian Johnson as the offensive coordinator, and we also talked to Michael Clay. So we have a bunch of stuff to kind of break down from that. I also have some of the numbers for the undrafted group of free agents that the Eagles brought in. So we'll kind of go through those and see which guys we think have a shot to make the team. And then at the end, we'll talk about Jalen Hurts graduating or walking at graduation at Oklahoma and getting his master's degree is pretty cool.
I have a great story about that.
Yeah, so a little tease there for you. We'll get to that at the end. But Sean Desai, he's a real person. He does exist. It was good to talk to him. It was good to finally meet him. And based on how he performed in that opening press conference, I don't know what the heck took so long.
Yeah, very sharp, very bright. For a guy who was meeting us for the first time and in Philly for the first time. Well, he's been here for almost 3 months, but in that situation, press conference room, I thought he was great. He was really kind of turned the page on last year, which is important to do. As good as the defense was in a lot of areas for most of the year, it was important. I was really impressed with him. He's a guy I didn't know a whole lot about. You knew he was really smart just from his background, but I really was impressed with the way he came off, what he said, and just his demeanor, his confidence in what he does and how he does it, and his to use a Nick Sirianni word, just his connection with the city. It was an impressive performance.
Yeah, it was. And look, we know it's a press conference. It doesn't mean that success is going to follow. We've seen the opposite with Sirianni. That opening presser was just as big a disaster as possible, and he ended up being a really good coach here, and he still is a really good coach here. So we're not like crowning him yet, but I thought there were really positive signs. And, you know, I think one of the first ones, and look, I think this is calculated to some degree, but if he means it, it'll mean a lot. He was asked about his defensive philosophy, and he did get into some of that, but when he was asked about it the first time, he didn't. He basically said, I want people to feel this defense. And that can mean a lot of different things, but to me, reading between the lines, I think it means he wants this defense to be aggressive.
Yeah, we want to make sure people feel us. We want to be able to run. We want to be able to hit, and we want to play smart. That we want that to be a reflection of who we are. And yeah, that's more important than zone versus man, or 3-4 versus 4-3. I mean, that stuff's important, but and that's going to depend on the personnel and who you're facing and all that stuff. But yeah, you want a defense that, I mean, this is a unique city in that fans get more fired up when the defense is on the field than the offense. Maybe not since Jalen became the QB, people get pretty fired up for him, but historically it's always been that way. When the defense is on the field, people go nuts. And there's a certain mentality that Eagles fans demand, and it's a winning, philosophy on defense, and had some great defenses here, and he seems to understand that, and he doesn't just want to have a defense that fans are going to like, but I think fans appreciate a certain type of football in this city, and he's coached here before. He coached at Temple. He got his master's at Temple, and I think he understands the connection between playing that brand of defense and having success and being a unit that the city can be proud of.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that it's going to look like Jim Johnson's defense. I think that's just not going to be the style he has. It shouldn't be the style he has based on the personnel they have on the field. You don't need to blitz a ton when you have guys like Hassan Reddick and the whole crew up there wreaking havoc. But I think it's about dictating a little bit. And if there was one area where Sirianni was kind of critical of Jonathan Gannon during his time here, it was that. It was he wanted the defense to be more aggressive at times. And that even became public in 2021 a little bit. He said he brought that up to Gannon. So I think it's very possible this defense is not as good statistically in 2023, but I also think there's a chance that even with that, fans might like it more. And I don't think that's completely misguided.
That's an interesting statement. We'll see. I guess it depends how much. I mean, just personnel wise, I think they're just not as good. They're not as talented. They're potentially, as talented, but as far as proven talent, they're not there yet. It'll be interesting. I think a lot of fans will just be happy Gannon's not here, and they'll whatever they get, they'll be happy with. Which I never did understand the whole thing. Obviously, it ended really ugly, and
it keeps getting uglier after he left, which is hard to do.
It did, and it has. But yeah, I really like, and he really went out of his way to say, and Gannon's name never came up, which was interesting. He talked. It
was
about
the elephant in the room, though. It was like it was there.
It was.
He was there. His name wasn't mentioned, but his presence was there.
Oh, no doubt about it. But I think that was intentional, probably. I mean, certainly, Brian Johnson mentioned Shane Steichen a bunch of times. But be that as it may, I really like what he said about, every year in the NFL is a different year. There's no resting on your laurels. We had 70 sacks. That's great. Next year's a different year. We can't go on the field and expect to have that kind of success because, we got to work for it. This is a new team. This is a different team. And it's a different staff. It's not just a coordinator. There's a whole different defensive staff this year. So I think that's important. You can't just go out there and, we still have a lot of the same guys. We're going to have the same success. He said it's going to look different. It's going to be different. We're going to do different things. And obviously some of the really good players on that group are still here. But I think it certainly sounds like he's got some different ideas than his predecessor, although they come from the same tree in a kind of.
Well, that was another interesting part of what he said, because last year we saw Gannon run a bunch of, like, for lack of a better term, Vic Fangio staples and elements from that defense. And I thought you had to listen to it a little bit, but Desai mentioned at one point that, yeah, a lot of guys are, and I'm paraphrasing, a lot of guys are running that stuff. Not a lot of guys worked as closely with Vic Fangio as I did.
Yeah.
He said, for 5 years, I was watching him work and I was seeing exactly what goes into making it happen. And that is intimate knowledge that I think it's really hard to duplicate by watching game tape, because game tape, you see the end result, but you don't know the whys. You don't know what went into making it happen. And Desai has that. And there's no guarantee that like that stuff's all going to work and it's all going to transfer. But there's a reason people around the league are copying a lot of what Fangio does. There's a reason a lot of people think the Eagles might have wanted to keep Fangio around. And obviously that didn't work out. But this might be the next best thing if that's the type of stuff you want to run defensively.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's like if you have 100 bands play Hey Jude that are really good bands. They're not going to sound like the Beatles. You know, really good cover bands, pros, know all the chords and the solos and everything, but it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
The other part that I liked him talking about his detail.
Yeah.
And it kind of came through when he talked about the hiring process, which we know is a thorough process. The Eagles are almost notorious at this point for having these marathon interview sessions, not just for head coaches, but when they fill coordinator spots, even like position coaches, those are more intense than other teams. And it makes sense that Desai appreciates that, because that's one of the things that Nick Sirianni always mentions about why he hired Desai in the first place, was his attention to detail, his thoroughness. And I think that comes from his teaching background. I think that's something him and Sirianni are pretty lockstep in.
Yeah, that was a really interesting comment. Like you would think a lot of guys would be like, oh, it never ended. It was so long. We were in there. It just went forever. He said he really enjoyed it. He enjoyed how rigorous the process was because he could relate to that level of detail. So that's that connection that Nick talks about, and it was there right from the beginning. It sounded that's what he said, and I believe it. If you're going to coach for Nick, you have to have that, and he certainly showed that he did. Yeah, I mean to enjoy, like, I don't know anyone who's ever said they enjoy like 10-hour interviews, but
yeah, I mean it's crazy, and I think that really starts at the top with Jeff Lurie, because he does those. I mean, I've heard stories about those interviews. I forget who it was. Was it Arthur Smith or someone when they were going through the Sirianni hiring cycle? I think it might have been Arthur Smith. It might not be, but they were like, they finally got an offer for a job, and they were so thrilled that it came before they had to interview with the Eagles, because they're like, I don't know if I could do that.
I think it was Arthur Smith. Yeah.
Was it? Have you heard that too? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was something like that. And it's because they last all day. Sometimes they last into the next day. And I think Sirianni enjoyed that. He came prepared for that because of how detailed he is. And I think there's a lot of similarities between him and Desai.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true. I think that you kind of sense that after talking to him. And that's, look, as much autonomy as Nick gives his defensive coordinator, they need to be. I mean, it's Nick's defense. Nick has a philosophy, and whoever he has as his coordinator is carrying that out. It's not like the guys just coming in and this is what we're going to run. So they have to be in lockstep, and it seems like they are.
I think if I'm just comparing it to the last staff, there's less autonomy than there was with Peterson and Schwartz.
Oh, I see what you mean.
I don't even think it's close. And that's obviously, you have a much, a defensive coordinator who's been in the league for so long. But it was really like Doug ran the offense, Jim ran the defense, and it worked out. They won a Super Bowl. But I think Nick definitely is much more involved in all areas of this team.
I don't think there's any question. I don't know if Doug could have named half the defensive starters. No, I'm kidding. But But look, there's no right or wrong with that. And like you said, I mean, they won a Super Bowl with Doug. I mean, Doug was basically the offense, and Doug called plays. Doug was, it was Doug's offense. It was Jim Short's defense, uh, and I think Doug liked that. I think he was comfortable with that. And Jim was a hell of a coach.
Yeah, still is. Cleveland now.
We'll see him at joint practices.
We will see Rodney McLeod too. He signed with them. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
The last thing I had on Desai was it might have been you asking him actually about the competition aspect on defense, because there are some spots there are a lot that are kind of written in pen already. We know who the starters are, but there are other positions on this team where there's going to be some competition in training camp. And I think he really is looking forward to that. He could have just said, yeah, competition's great, but he went into it enough that I think he thinks this is a good thing to have, especially as a first-year DC here.
Yeah, it was my question. I asked it really not for the answer as much to find out how he answered and how much he was into that concept of competition. And there are, look, we know a bunch of the starters, but there's going to be reps up for grabs. There's going to be starting spots up for grabs. Third corner, starting safety, linebacker. There's going to be, and just for reps up front. So he seemed to relish that, talking about it, and it's going to make things really interesting in camp.
What defensive battle in camp are you? Because everyone's obviously most looking forward to the punter battle in training camp. But what
you are?
What
defense? You're a big punter guy.
What defensive battle are you most looking forward to?
I would say safety, just because. I mean, I think Reed Blankenship will be a starter, but I mean, there's a lot of unknowns.
That's not even guaranteed. Yeah,
it's not guaranteed. That's why it's so interesting, because everything's up for grabs.
Yeah, and I think it'll be some combination of those three: Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brown, and Terrell Edmonds.
Sure,
but I don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, it could be any combination of those three could be your starters.
And if you look at the size pass, there have also been some three safety sets. So even if one of those guys doesn't win a job, he could still have a role. And I'm kind of curious to see what that looks like too.
Yeah. Avante could be that third safety as well. So
yeah, that's another wrinkle to the whole thing, because he has that versatility. But then who's playing nickel? Is Zach McPherson going to get some reps there? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, we've never seen that.
I haven't seen it, but now you drafted Keely Ringo, and you have Greedy Williams, who's a veteran with some experience, some draft clout. So I don't know exactly how that plays out in the secondary.
And just the third corner spot. I mean, the whole secondary, just there's a lot of intrigue there.
Aside from the three corners, like we know those guys, but after that, there are a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And then I also kind of think they're not done at linebacker, so we could see more competition there.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's a chance they're not done at a lot of spots. That's one thing we know about Howie.
Yeah, that's the one though. To me, I'm like they better not be done.
Yeah, that's fair.
If there's one spot you kind of feel like that, feels like safety last year.
Right.
Yeah, but
shakes out.
You could argue adding a linebacker late is even harder. Well, maybe not. Maybe though.
Zach Brown available?
He is, I think. Yeah. Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
Our first chance talking to the new offensive coordinator. Obviously, we talked to him when he was a quarterback's coach, but
rarely.
Sure, rarely. But this is a different role, obviously, and it's a very important role. It was a no-brainer hire. Like, we knew that if Shane Steichen left, they were going to promote Brian Johnson, because that might have been the only way to keep him.
Yeah.
And the timing, luckily for them, worked out, because if Shane stayed, or if Shane somehow that process got dragged out more, Brian might have been gone. But they're also lucky they played so late.
Right. In that instance, they are. Yeah, they're lucky to have him. And a lot of the questions pertain to play calling, which he's done in college, but not on this level. And he had some good answers. He said, play calling is really different in the NFL than college, which is good to hear him acknowledge that. It's a whole different animal. But gosh, he had some did some impressive stuff at Florida. They had the number one passing offense in college football his last year there in 2020, and they were number 9. They averaged over 500 yards. They had a ton of talent, but I like that he acknowledged how good Shane was at it, and that he really appreciated Shane's kind of understanding of when to do different things, and but still saying he's going to put his own spin on it. And I think one really good thing is that even though he's quarterback's coach, he knows his team's personnel. He knows exactly what the receivers and the tight ends. Now, as far as the linemen, that's new for him. He talked about how he's catching up on that a little bit. He said he was just in with the O lineman that day. I think that we talked to him last Thursday, whenever it was. So to me, he had some good answers and came across well. It's going to come down to, those key situations in the close games and where he is as a play caller, and that's something that you just don't know until you see it.
Yeah, I agree.
Nick Sirianni is a hell of an offensive mind. He's just not a good play caller.
Yeah, and I don't think it's like he could never be a good play caller either. Like I think that he realizes he has more value handing it over, but how Brian Johnson is going to handle play calling, to me, is one of the biggest questions about this team. And like you mentioned, we really will have no idea. We'll have a little idea. We won't really know, though, until they start playing real games.
That's true.
That's part of it, where you're just like, you got to wait and see and trust that it's going to work out. Because we've heard him. Well, yeah, competitive advantage, but also the fear of the unknown, because Shane was so good at it. He had such a feel for it, and it's hard. It's almost, for me, it's hard to imagine anyone else doing it as well as Shane did it last year. So you might just have some regression based on how good it was a season ago. Now, we've heard him say that, he was always kind of like running it through his head, and he was always on the same page as Shane Steichen. And Shane said the same thing too. I asked him at the combine how he thought Brian would be as a play caller, and he said, yeah, we're always on the same page. Yeah, it's a lot different when you're in the seat. And I think he'll be fine, but can't say for sure until we see it actually happen.
Yeah, Brian had a quote, and again, I'm paraphrasing. He said, there was so many times where Shane would he would pick something off the call sheet, and Brian was like, that's exactly what I would have called there. But this is different. Now it's his call sheet, and I can't wait to see it. His understanding of Jalen is so advanced, and such an advantage for him. Other things go into play calling, but if you've known your quarterback since he was 4 years old or whatever it is, and he played for Jalen's dad. If you have that background, and really you could tell by just how well Jalen played last year with him as his position coach, that there's a great relationship and a great understanding. He really knows what Jalen likes, what he doesn't like. And that's going to be a big part of it. That he can start out like on second base with this play calling, because he's got such an advanced understanding of Jalen and what he likes, what he's good at, and how he wants to attack.
Yeah, even if he hadn't known Jalen for almost his entire life, last year alone would make you feel pretty confident. He was the quarterback's coach as Jalen had an MVP caliber season. So, even if he didn't know Jalen from the time he was 4, you'd think, all right, he has a good idea of what this guy likes in this offense. Is there also, you mentioned competitive advantage, they obviously have that defensively. They might have that a little bit offensively, because as much as we want to see Brian Johnson call a game. Other teams haven't seen it either.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I'm really curious, where the running game is going to fit in, and is he going to run more than Shane? I mean, they've got quite a stable of running backs, so it'll be interesting to see how that all evolves. It might just depend on the situation in the game. I mean, I really like how Shane, threw to build the lead and then ran to keep the lead. I mean, that's pretty basic stuff, but he was really good at it and still mixing in the other stuff at the right times.
I think that is pretty organizational, though.
Yeah, I agree, but just knowing how to switch over, when to switch over, how gradually, like when's the right time to start running it. Shane had a really good feel for that. And then, just because you're running the ball, then on 3rd and 2, take a deep shot, that kind of stuff, just being really aggressive. Shane was a really aggressive play caller. You never knew it was coming and made him so dangerous.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing about having 10 of the 11 starters back on offense. You're kind of emboldened to be aggressive again.
9 of 11, right?
Oh, 9 of 11, not Miles, yeah.
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 How quickly you forget.
Yeah. But, having that kind of non-turnover is nice. And I think it's still a really good offense. So you have I think you feel pretty good about, like if there's – because organizationally they're going to – like if it's 4th down, we're going for it. And in certain situations, so it allows you to be a little more aggressive as a play caller. I think he has that going for him like Shane did.
Just having that O-line allows you to be more aggressive.
Sure. Yeah. And the quarterback, because he can get you out of a lot of jams.
Yes, he can.
Yeah. Anything else from Brian Johnson? The only other thing was like him learning how to divvy up his time is sometimes a struggle for a young coordinator.
I like what he said about Alex Tanney, his replacement as quarterbacks coach. Spoke unusually highly of him. What do you call him, a superstar?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Alex Tanney's going to be a head coach, period. But he spoke so highly of him.
Yeah, and if this offense plays the way it did last year, this year, we might be talking about Alex Tanney's first press conference as offensive coordinator. That's not out of the realm possibility.
Or they might both be head coaches.
It happens. It's not as likely, probably.
No, not as likely. But, yeah, I mean, they're both on the fast track, no doubt.
Yeah, I agree. They think an awful lot of Alex. And, Brian was super, super praise heavy with him. Catch all the sports action and more at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone in the great sports book. Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay, now we're into the good part of the podcast. Michael Clay at the microphone talking punter competition.
Dave loves it. You can see Dave just sitting a little farther up in the seat, getting ready to pepper Michael with some questions about that punter battle. Well, it was interesting. It was
as much as I'm joking about it, I am kind of looking forward to watching the punter battle in training camp.
Yeah. I mean, after the way the season finished for Sipos, no doubt. I think the other guy's already in the lead.
I don't, but
no, of course not. But maybe in popularity.
In popularity, sure. I'm curious to see how it plays out, because the weird thing with Sipos is that it always looks pretty good in training camp. But I think just the fact that they have, and Ty Zettner is the other punter from Kansas State who was undrafted, they brought him in. Just the fact that he's here tells you the team is all right, well, we need to, because the first 2 years Sipos has been the punter. He hasn't had any competition, at least internal competition. So them just having another punter here shows that they realize he needs to be pushed a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we all realize that. I was really surprised last summer, especially because he was coming off a not very good 2021 season. I was surprised they didn't have somebody in to.
He was better this last year, and now they have competition.
Yeah, he was better before he got hurt, and I still wonder if he should if Brett Kern maybe should have been punting in the Super Bowl.
No.
I mean, especially after Siposs used the layoff. I mean, he hadn't played in 2 months, and he used that layoff as an excuse for that last punt.
Yeah, but that was one of Brett Kern's good punts.
I hear you, but I'd rather have a 40-yard punt. I mean, Brett Kern didn't have his punts weren't returned. I mean, I don't. He actually had fewer return yards his whole Eagles career than Siposs had on the one Kadarius Toney return.
Yeah, I mean, he was awful.
He wasn't as bad as Siposs was in the Super Bowl. I mean, that's just a fact. Anyway.
You're arguing for Brett Kern.
Did you watch the play? Did you watch the punt? And
no, I didn't. I didn't watch it. What happened?
Kadarius Toney fields it, and it was also a coverage breakdown. He runs. No, never mind.
Yeah.
You know, T.J. Edwards, who I think the world of, he really screwed that play up.
Yeah. It was, I mean, an awful play, obviously. But it's not just that. Even like Siposs improved last year, but he improved to the lower levels of being average in the league.
Correct. But he's also outdoors, weather, a lot of dome punters. I take them out of the equation. I thought for being a Northeast outdoor punter, bad conditions, he was barely adequate.
Yeah, which there are bigger problems, but on a team like this where there aren't a ton of holes, you can start to take a look at the punter. And if you can improve it, you try to improve it. Now, I don't know if Ty Detmer is going to be the answer here. I don't know.
I'll say this. I don't know if Ty Detmer is going to be the answer either. I'm just going to call him Ty Detmer. But I don't think Siposs is going to be a punter. Whether it's him or someone else, I just don't think he'll be this team's punter this year.
I do. And I think it's going to make a lot of people mad. Yeah, I think he's going to be the punter this year.
Okay.
We'll see it. We'll be tracking hang time at practice.
Yeah.
Hang time's easy, actually. It's trying to find out where the heck the punt landed. Like on the other side of the field is
depending what field we're on, yeah.
Yeah, that's always a little tricky. But I think we'll see it off the foot. Like we'll know who's kicking it better.
Yeah.
Who's the best punter you've ever covered?
Randall.
Who's the best?
It's not even close.
Yeah, all right. But like who's the best punter by profession?
Probably Cameron Johnston.
He
was really, really good.
He was good.
You know who wasn't bad was Matt McBriar was pretty good.
Donnie Jones was very good.
Donnie was Jones really, really consistent. But I would probably say Cameron Johnston.
Really interesting. I was I covered Leckler for a year or two. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Just different.
Yeah.
Because Donnie Jones had been down there, and then Leckler came in, and we're like, Donnie was pretty good, and then Leckler's just I've never seen anything. In practice, he used to just boot like 45-yard punt after 45-yard punt, bounce them out inside the 5. Like time after time. He should be a Hall of Famer. And I know
I agree.
Yeah.
We used to watch Randall. Of course, he had to do it in a few games when Telchik got hurt, and that's when he had the 92-yarder over Dave Meggett's head. Telchik wasn't hurt. He just said, I'm punting this ball. It went from like the 4. The thing is, Meggett finally went back and got it. It would have bounced another few yards, but it was always fun watching him punt and kick field goals at training camp. He once had a punt, obviously without any rush, that went 300 yards on the fly at Westchester. It actually went all the way to Exton. But no, he was convinced. And actually, Jim McMahon was a punter in college too at BYU. I believe he's an All-America punter. Randall always talked about, when I can't throw anymore, I'm going to come back as a punter.
He could probably be a punter right now.
He would be better than Aaron Siposs right now. When I saw Randall last year, he was at one of the Eagles games, and he's in great shape. He keeps himself in shape. And daughter's an Olympic high jumper, and it has nothing to do with that. I just say that just to piss you off.
Yeah, it worked.
But yeah, Randall could average 45 right now. 41-5 net. I'm convinced of it. Anyway.
Just so offensive to Aaron Siposs that he said Randall could be a better player right now.
I've never seen a guy strike the ball with more force, more power than Randall. It was, people would come just to listen to him pump the ball.
I'm curious to see how this punter battle turns out.
Yeah, that too.
Anything else from Michael Clay that really kind of stood out to you?
I mean, we talked about the Super Bowl on last week in our last pod, but no.
Yeah. Always good to talk to Michael Clay. We have some undrafted free agent money here.
You had a good story about Marcus Mariota. They were teammates in college.
They were teammates in college, which is kind of cool.
And they went to play soccer together. And I forget the rest of the story.
But so that's a fun question. And Mariota would be a good inside guess. If the Eagles had to pick one player to be an emergency punter and not Jake Elliott, so one like non-specialist to be the emergency punter, who would it be?
Was Mariota a punter?
I don't know if he was a punter, but I know he played like.
Oh, because
he was such a good soccer player.
Yeah,
it's a good start.
Yeah, why not?
Anyone else who you think would be just like looking at them? You think I could probably punt a ball?
I'm thinking Ian Book. No, I don't. Nobody comes to mind. Nobody.
So you're punting on this little game that I've concocted.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to sleep on that one.
Okay. I think AJ Brown looks like he could punt a football. Played baseball, so he has like multi-sport.
I bet Devin Allen could. I mean, the guy's got strong legs. He ran
That's true.
13.0 or 12.91 or whatever he ran.
I like that you just use this game to shoehorn another track record.
It's a valid answer.
It is a valid answer. I'll give you that. I think he'd be a good one. Receivers to me seem like they could punt. I'm trying to think who else makes sense. Sidney Brown to me seems like he could punt a football.
There you go.
No one else?
No.
Which lineman do you think would have the best shot?
Either side of the ball?
Yeah.
Nolan Smith.
Oh, I like that. That's a good answer.
Yeah, Nolan Smith.
I'm wondering how long I can drag this out and you'll still play along. Which you didn't play along from the beginning. I don't know why you would. All right. Undrafted money. This is always fun. It doesn't always tell you necessarily how it's going to work out. And last year is the perfect example of that because they gave $320,000 in guaranteed money and a $20,000 signing bonus to Carson Strong. And then they yelled at him every time he tried to touch a football. Reed Blankenship, the second lowest guarantee, he ends up making the team. And we're talking $5,000. We're talking as a signing bonus. We're talking about him maybe being a starter in year 2. So it doesn't always tell you success, but to me, it's almost like how draft round or like draft status doesn't always tell you success, but it can tell you how much they like these players.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, the Carson Strong thing remains one of the bigger mysteries. I can see giving him 320, and then if he has a really bad training camp, cutting him. But he just never even got a chance to show that he was no good.
Yeah, he must have been awful in meetings or something. I don't know.
That's the only thing I can think if he just didn't pick up the offense.
That would be, and I've never heard, like, I tried to do a little digging on that.
Me too.
Never really got anywhere. That would be an abnormally high thing on the list of truth serum questions that shouldn't be there because like it doesn't really matter, but I still want to know what the heck happened.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Okay. Let's go with the top one here. Joseph Ngata, the receiver from Clemson, total guarantee of $230, signing bonus of $30. So really high there at a position where the Eagles are not very deep right now. They have some questions. They also just signed Charleston Rambo, who was college teammates with Jalen Hurts, was here for a tryout at rookie camp. Not technically a rookie, but another guy thrown in the mix there at a position where it wouldn't be crazy to see one of those guys make it.
Yeah, you don't have to be a rookie to be a rookie. I just saw where J-Jaw was in somebody's camp.
Yeah, well, I looked up a rookie camp a couple weeks ago. I saw Julian Good-Jones, and I was like, this has got to be his 5th rookie camp.
Yeah, I know when they in his locker it says Julian Bad Jones. It's a sign that he probably is not going to make the team.
Oof. Ben Van Sumeren, linebacker from Michigan State, total guarantee 130, signing bonus 30. So a really high signing bonus for him. Obviously, another position where they're not deep. Now, the thing with him is he's kind of raw, hasn't played linebacker a long time, but
Tools out the wazoo, though.
yeah, super athletic. So he's a guy to me, like maybe he doesn't make the team, but I'd anticipate him, unless he's really awful at training camp, sticking on the practice squad.
You would think. Yeah, I think he'll be an interesting guy to watch because he's going to make some plays. He'll flash, but he's also just going to be in over his head sometimes too.
Yeah, he's Davion Taylor that they didn't use a 3rd-round pick on.
That's fair.
Jaden Hazelwood, receiver from Arkansas, total guarantee 127.5, signing bonus 12.5. So both receivers in this class got good money. I think that's telling.
And, one of those guys is going to have a shot to stick. There's a lot of questions there. So, we'll see, especially if you subscribe to the theory that Howie might try to trade Quez at some point.
Yeah, I think one of these guys would really need to, solidify a roster spot before he did that.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
But. And Hazelwood, another guy who played with Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma. And we're seeing a lot of those guys. It's him, it's Rambo, it's Grant Calcaterra, Kennedy Brooks, Trey Sermon.
Yeah, 1 year.
Trey Sermon, yeah. They're recreating the 2019 Oklahoma team. All right, Mekhi Gardner, cornerback from LSU, total guarantee 117.5, signing bonus 17.5. I thought it was interesting because you look down at Eli Ricks, total guarantee of 40K, signing bonus 10. So significantly more money for Mekhi Gardner than Eli Ricks, who's the guy we've been talking about a lot more.
Yeah, which is surprising that Eli Ricks would come here under those circumstances. Either he just really thought he had a shot here, he wanted to be here, or he didn't get the offers around the rest of the league that he was expecting, because that's a low amount of money for a guy who a lot of people thought was going to be drafted on day 2, possibly not that long ago.
Yeah, it is important to remember last year the Eagles brought in 3 cornerbacks, and the one with the least guaranteed money ended up making the team. That was Josh Jobe. The other 2 ahead of him were Mario Goodrich and Josh Blackwell from Duke. Mario Goodrich from Clemson.
Yep.
Ty Zedner, punter / kicker from Kansas State, total guarantee 115, signing bonus 15. Another thing to remember with him, obviously he's competing for the punter job, but he was a kicker at college too, and that was something Michael Clay mentioned, that in training camp and in preseason games, that'll give Jake Elliott a little break.
Yeah, rest his leg a little bit. We know what he can do. I think the dumbest thing is kicking extra points and short field goals with your main kicker in the preseason. And maybe they need the reps. I doubt Jake Elliott needs the reps. I would go for it every time. Every time.
I mean, there are other guys on those special teams units that you're trying to evaluate, though.
Not field goal kick.
Yeah.
No, you evaluate him on everything else.
Okay, it's the play. It's a play. No,
I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
I think you learn more about your personnel by going for it.
Okay. Trevor Reed, offensive tackle from Louisville.
There's more.
Total guarantee 110, signing bonus 10. He's my dark horse to make the team.
Trevor.
Yeah, haven't seen him on the field yet out here, but
no shot. He has no shot.
No shot?
I don't know. I don't know.
Judge, I'm just saying, going by the position.
Yeah.
They have kept other undrafted offensive linemen.
Yeah.
So I think that's a possibility. Okay. Brady Russell, tight end from Colorado, 48,000 guarantee, signing bonus 8. And then the last one, Chim Okorafor from Benedictine College. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
You don't know, do you?
No, I do know. I mean,
Benedictine.
Benedictine, sure.
Okay.
Because in 1968, they won the NAI cross country championships.
Is that real?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
How would I know that?
How would you know that a school won a college track championships?
Not NAIA, and I said cross country, not track. Different sport, Dave.
It's all running. And the last one, he no guaranteed money for him.
Okay. Maybe we should move on.
I feel like you were ready to move on before we started that.
No, it's always exciting. It's always interesting and then, as training camp evolves and some of these guys separate themselves, some of them struggle or get cut, you look back at the money and see where they were right and where they were wrong.
Yeah, and last year threw a wrench in it because you had Reed getting so little and making the team. You had the crazy number for Carson Strong, and then even like the corners were out of whack last year. Before that year, and every year that we've kind of studied this, the money has told you a lot. They gave a ton to like TJ Edwards and Sua Opeta. Those were the two that really stood out. There have been some others. Like the money normally does tell you a lot.
Yeah. Last year was an exception.
Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Master's degree in human resources. Pretty cool. It is pretty cool. It was fun to watch him walk across that stage, and we saw the video of it. It was also, he talked to the Eagles website, and he clarified that he took care of 2 classes after the Super Bowl. Because we were all wondering, how in the heck did this guy have time to take classes during the football season? He didn't. He did them after, which is still very impressive, but less completely mind-blowing.
Yeah, you picture him like in at halftime in Glendale studying his bio notes or something.
Right next to Gannon studying his Arizona Cardinals.
But it is impressive. He's such an impressive guy. And you think about just the going nonstop from the start of training camp in July through the Super Bowl in the middle of February. And all you want to do when it's over, I mean, I know all we want to do when the season's over is just chill, sit on the deck, go to the beach, relax. And he's taking classes. Look, he's an impressive kid. He never stops surprising you and impressing you. Nobody knew he was even doing this. So, you get the contract to be so easy. You get $250 million contract. It'd be so easy to just start buying stuff and spending money and, fancy this, fancy that. And he's like going to grad school. Special guy. Yeah,
it's pretty cool. He's apparently had some credits that are about to expire. So I kind of get that too. It's like, man, if I don't do this, I'll have to restart it. And what are the chances you want to restart the whole thing?
Right.
Not great.
I mean, I don't think he'll need that degree to get a job at any point. But,
transferable skills are always there somewhere.
I mean, I remember my dad telling me, I think it was the Greek word for scholarship means learning for the sake of learning, education for the sake of education, not with a goal in mind of a job or a salary or a contract or anything. And that's what education used to be. You would study Latin and you would study, so I really admire him for what he did. And it's something he didn't have to do, but it was important to him.
Yeah. And also saw Todd Bowles got his college degree, 59 years old, Todd Bowles.
Yeah, good for him.
I love that stuff. That's really cool. And if you get your degree, walk.
Absolutely.
Right? I know sometimes it's like, I don't know, I took 9 classes, I finished this degree in 13 years. No, walk. You did it. Like, go take that victory lap. You earned it. Yeah, I like seeing everyone walk at graduation.
Yeah, it's a cool feeling. So I'm told. So Jalen Hurts. So he's in the stadium doing the graduation thing, and there's a runner from your old high school, Cherokee High School in South Jersey, named Nicole Clifford, state champ in the mile in the 1600. last year. She's a freshman at Oklahoma. So she's driving around campus. She has no idea Jalen Hurts is getting his master's or even in town or anything. And she's driving around with her roommate. They're just running errands. They're getting something to eat. And she looks at her phone. There's video of him at the stadium. And her family, she has family in Philly, in Bucks County. And she's always been a huge Philadelphia sports fan, huge Eagles fan. And she's like, we're going to go meet him. And her roommate's like, you're crazy. How are you going to meet Jalen Hurts? She's like, we're going to go meet him, turn around, drive to the stadium. She's like, well, where are we going to go? Just drive to the stadium. So they drive to the stadium, and it's a huge parking lot, stadium parking lot. They start driving around the parking lot, and she sees a giant black Escalade with two security guards on each, with a security guard on each side, and then like a couple smaller, like, security looking cars behind it. She's like, that's got to be his car. So the ceremony's still going on. So she goes across the street and just waits. And she's waiting and waiting and waiting. And all of a sudden, here comes a little cart bringing Jalen over. He's about to get into the car. She starts sprinting across the street.
And we know she's fast.
She is fast. Yeah. And she's just screaming, Jalen, I'm from Philadelphia. I'm a huge Eagles fan. So I have a photo here that Nicole has graciously allowed us to show. Let's see if we can show this here. Let's see how you do this. So there's Jalen and Nicole in the parking lot outside the stadium at Oklahoma. He was very nice, took pictures with her, and she's like, can I get a picture? I'm from Philadelphia. He's like, of course you can. So good to hear that he's, but not surprising, but cool story. And I give her credit for doing that. That's a fun thing. And she was determined. She was like, I'm gonna find Jalen Hurts, and she did.
Congratulations, Jalen.
Have you ever like done that? Have you ever like stalked a celebrity, like an actor, like
nah,
a band or anything?
Not really my thing.
Yeah, another sports writer,
No, not really.
Mr. Kempsky, I've always wanted to meet you.
Oh, that one, of course. You do that stuff?
I don't think I ever have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always try to, when I like meet a celebrity, I always try to make it not weird.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, even if on the inside, you're like, oh, that's really cool to meet this person.
I worked in a record store. I took a year off between high school and college. I worked in this record store in White Plains, New York, Record World. And we got backstage passes to all these concerts, like, at Nassau Coliseum, at the Palladium, all these places in New York, Westchester Premier Theater in Tarrytown. So we would meet like the Outlaws, the Marshall Tucker Band, Boston. And I was like 17 or 18. And I remember my boss telling me one day, he's like, just act normal. Like they're just normal people. And I always remember that. And I remember like Boston was like the biggest band in the world. We're backstage at Nassau Coliseum. And this guy from Epic Records brought us over to meet them. And like, there was some other people there who were like freaking out. I'm like, hey, what's up, Leo? Or, just like, yeah, really good concert tonight. How's the tour going? And then if you just treat people like normal people, they'll treat you the same way back. There's nobody named Leo in the band, but yes, that's if you want a celebrity to spend time with you and have a conversation with you, just be normal, and it works.
Yeah. And if you see Leo, just say, hey.
I did meet Leo Sayer once. It was at a Robert Palmer concert we were backstage at.
All right, anyway, we got to wrap this up. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. All right. If you enjoyed the Eagle Eye podcast, you know what to do. Rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods.
Oh, who should the Sixers hire?
If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Who should they hire? I don't know. Monty?
I'm a Sam Cassell fan. I don't think Jay Wright's interested. I know everybody would love to see that. I think he's moved on. He's great in the broadcast booth. I wonder if Randy Ayers is available. Ben, Randy Ayers doing anything these days? All right, let's put an end to it.
All right. Take care, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.